Bruchim Abon B'Shem Hashem B'Shem Egin Shiur. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shiur from Rabbi Yakov Shlita on Dinik Ksiva B'Chol Hamoed, writing on Chol Hamoed. Today's shiur is nimmt was Rabbi Dov Zilfrein V'Yim Mishmas Imoy Alta Etia Bas Nota Ala Sholem. Yotzad is today Yirav Nissen. It's also learned in the Nishmas Isha Rezel Bas Rabbi Yitzchak Ala Sholem. Yotzad is also today Yirav Nissen Tenish B'Seim through his B'Sar Chaim. Davray Tzchus is sponsoring shiur call Egin Shiur Torah 718-851-8651. Email ist@yeshivanet.com. Rav Smith.
The Zohar Kodesh says everything needs mazel, even the sefer Torah Heichel needs mazel. I'm afraid to say this, that Chol Hamoed is a shlim mazel, it doesn't have a mazel. Chol Hamoed always comes after a big Yom Tiv, after Sukkot, the Yachana for Sukkot. If you have time to learn the halachas of Sukkot, the Aleph Minim, and then you have Chol Hamoed. When do you have time to learn Hilchas Chol Hamoed? Pesach, weeks of Achana and learning. Who has time for Hilchas Chol Hamoed? So I want to try today to do what the Pele Yoyitz writes in Erech Chol Hamoed. He says, "Ish hayori lenafshay." If he cherishes his life, should make sure to learn Hilchas Chol Hamoed. You have to know what to do. And we'll talk about the regular shilas about writing a shopping list, writing chidushei Torah, any type of writing a check, writing a receipt, and of course the more contemporary questions, which is a sugya for itself, and that is the new phenomenon. Who writes today? Who has a pen today? It's computer, ATM, photostat, and all over. This writing, you pick up a phone and you don't no longer rotary phone. You write numbers. Is that considered ksiva? So basically, we have shtayim sheyachas. It's really one yisoid. The Mishnah in Moyikotan, the end of Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis, gives us a very good insight into the whole sugya. Zok the Mishnah, "Ein koisvin shtorei choy b'moed." You can't write a IOU on Chol Hamoed. Zok the Sfas Emes, that's already a chiddush. Because the halacha it's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch, it's based on a Gemara in Bava Basra. You're not allowed to lend money either without edus or without a shtar. So we could even consider that writing a shtar chayiv is somewhat of a mitzvah. So why is it asar Chol Hamoed? But the Mishnah continues, "Ein koisvin svarim tefillin and mezuzahs." You can't even write what we call stam, even though it's kedusha atzma. Sefer Torah tells us a kedusha atzma. That's true, but Chol Hamoed is also kedusha. Can't write a Chol Hamoed. Sefer Torah tefillin mezuzahs. And the third example is probably the biggest chiddush, and that is a magian afilu b'sefer Ezra. Now that's the girsa, but Rashi feels the ikka girsa is a magian afilu b'sefer Azora. Zok Rashi, there was a sefer Torah that was kept in the Azora that was the most authentic. It was the most accurate sefer Torah that had everything right. That was the model that you wanted in the writer's sefer Torah. You followed that. The sefer in the Azora with the hay, that was the sefer Torah Shebazor. So it had to be very authoritative. It had to be very accurate. And now there's a mistake. So you talk about a sakana to the accuracy of the Torah. Zok the Mishnah, nothing doing. You can't correct it. And the Mechaber quotes this in our Simon Tafkuf Mem Hey. And Mr. Brewer makes a point of saying, even if you don't write even one letter, so what are you doing? So let's say they wrote, by mistake, they wrote it Reish instead of a Dalet. That's also you're not allowed to correct. So we definitely see what it means. Writing a Chol Hamoed is absolutely awesome. But Lamaisa, we have to take a giant step now because we have a giant agenda. So basically, we're going to go straight to halacha Lamaisa. We know the Mishnah that very much limits writing a Chol Hamoed, even Sefer Torah Shebazar, even just a partial letter. But we also know there are certain malachas that are mutter on Chol Hamoed. So to make a long story short, it's really very simple. When it comes to writing, regular writing, we'll soon see, as opposed to a skilled craftsman, which you're going to call an uman, but a regular ma'aseh hedyot that me and you do when we write a shopping list or write a check. We don't write calligraphy, we don't write oisi sefer Torah. So we write out any type of writing, that's called a ma'aseh hedyot. Not that the person's a hedyot, but it's not professional. Ksav Meshit, it's called in Paiskim. So that, when it's a Tzorech HaMoyed, you're allowed to write. So a combination of regular Ma'aseh Hedyot, and also the purpose is for a Tzorech HaMoyed. That's the basic klal in Siman Taf Kuf Mem. Taf Kuf Mem Aleph Agabi all malachis, but in our Siman, this is the Yesod in Taf Kuf Mem Hey. Why did Chazal allow writing if Ksiv is also Chol Hamoed? So evidently, since Lamaisa Chol Hamoed is not Yom Tiv, there are more term than a Yom Tiv. So Chazal said, if it's Tzarech Yom Tiv, Tzarech Moed, it's good enough. So that's a good example. And I'll give you a better example, and that will also explain another Mishnah. The Mishnah in the top of Yud Ches Amud Beis Moyekatan allows writing Igeres Rishus. What is Igeres Rishus? So the way the Rif, Rosh, Rambam, Tur, Yushalmi all explain, Igeres Rishus is when a person writes an Igeres Shalom. He writes a friendly letter to his friend. Zok Teshuvas Min HaShemayim, one of the Gedolei Rishonim who asked Min HaShemayim, Siman Lamed Beis, why is Igeres Shalom Mutan Chol Hamoed? The Torah says, what are you doing? You're trying to show a certain friendship, a certain ava. Oh, you want to give someone simcha? You're praying a Yiddish heart? Zok Teshuvas Min HaShemayim, Umusamcha about. You want to give him simcha, bavor a simcha, you're allowed to write it on Chol Hamoed. Good. So therefore, Igeres Rishus, says the Mechaba, in now with Siman Taka Tafkuf and Meisif Hey, is mutter. Zok the Mishnah, why is it mutter? Teretz is Pashut. It's our combination. It's only a Maisa Hedjid. It's not. You're not using calligraphy, and you're doing it Tzarech Hamoed. Now wait a second. If that's the case, so why is writing a Shtar Chayiv also? It's also, you're not writing a get, he's writing a Shtar Chayiv, which is Maisa Hedjid, Tzarech Hamoed. And the answer is, you're right. If you look at the Mishnah, the reason why you can't write a Shtar Chayiv is because you could write it after Yom Tov. You could wait till after Yom Tov. So if it's not a Tzarech Hamoed because you could wait, you're mechayiv to wait. But Taka the Mechaba says, in Tafkuf Mehei Sivav, if you have to write a Shtar Chayiv, you need the money on Chol Hamoed to buy Tzarech Yom Tov. So then it is a Tzarech Moed, then writing an IOU is not worse than writing an Igeres Shalom, and it's mutter. So basically we have Yesod Aleph for Maisa Hedjid. We'll soon touch what that means. Maisa Hedjid is mutter Tzarech Moed. But now the question is, how about if it's a Maisa Uman? What is a Maisa Uman? So let's look back at the Mishnah. Ein Koisen Svarim Tefillin and Mezuzos. Why not? The teretz is because unless you're a sefer, you cannot write a safris. It's a special skill. You need an artist. You need someone that's trained. You need a craftsman. So Chazal understood a Maisa Uman is also even l'tzarech moed because it's more of a Maisa Malacha. Now, if you look at the Maisa Uman, there are two parts that distinguish it as a Maisa Uman. Number one, you need a sefer. You can't just get up and write. You have to practice. And number two, the teitzah is much a quality work. So Maisa Uman, you need a pu'ula of an Uman, number one, and you need a teitzah. It's a beautiful work. So this is why it's a much more of malacha, and it's not mutter tzarech moed. When is it mutter? Only if it's a davar avud, something that if you don't do it, you're going to lose. Or it's a tzarech of a rabbi. Chazal matla tzarech rabbi. A wonderful example, the Mechaba in Siv Bey says this. If let's say you have a shul that has no sefer Torah, except for one that's needs a little correction, is a mistake. So even though you're not in Magia Ois Achas, that's because you can wait till after Yom Tov. But if you have a rabbi and don't have a sefer Torah to lay on Yom Tov, you're allowed to correct the sefer Torah. This is called a tzarech of a rabbi. And it's mutter, even a Maisa Uman. Another example, and this is a Davar Ovid, the Mechaba, based on the Mishnah, says you're allowed to write up a get for someone that wants to give a get. Now the way Rashi explains, Beis Yosef says it more clearly, a person that's willing to give a get today, he might change his mind tomorrow. So even though now he says, you know what, we can wait till after Yom Tov, it's not urgent, don't trust him. Because if he runs away, then it's an akuna. So the Mishnah is saying a get is a davar avod because he might change his mind. So even though he is cooperating now, you never know what's going to be. So that would be a davar avod. It's mutter even though a get needs a safris writing, but it's a davar avod tzarech to protect a loss. So the Chaza over briefly what we have Chol Hamoed. First of all, I should mention Chol Hamoed is more moyed than Chayil. Don't forget, Chazal were very makbid with Chol Hamoed. But basically, it's mutter a ma'isa hedjit. We'll give examples. It's mutter tzarech moyed, but if it's a ma'isa uman, then it's much more limited. It's only mutter for tzarech rabim and or a davar ha'avod. So let's talk l'ma'isa. A person wants to make a shopping list for the last days. Chol Hamoed, it's the only time to do it. So obviously can't do it after Yom Tov. So this would be our combination. It's a tzarech moyed and it's a ma'isa hedjit. The Shmir Shabbos and Samach Vav, Yiralf says beferish. People often ask, do you need a shinui when you write your shopping list? So the emphasis in Svara, if it's taka beferish and Mishnah, it's mutter because it's tzarech moyed, so why need a shinui for it? And that's true. The only issue is the Mechaba in Siv Zayin says that some feel that our ksiva, Meshit is called, might be a ma'isa uman for a different reason. So the Mishnah explains, even though we paskin not like that Ramah, that's choishish, that this is considered a ksiva of a uman, but some have a chumrah, they make a shinui. In other words, really, as the Mechaba says in Sif Zayin, when something is asa, shina doesn't help. When something is mutter, you don't need a shina. When something is questionable, the mashal ksav meshita, our ksav, so some go the extra mile and they make a shinui. Now, what does a shinui mean? So some people write with their left hand, that not only the one that shopping can't read, even they can't read. So what are you gaining? So the Maisa, the Mishnah Berurah says that the shinui does not have to be to write something illegible, but make the first line on a slant. Just to make a statement, it's Chol Hamoed, I'm aware it's Chol Hamoed, I'm going to try to do the best I can. So even though when you Chazal required a shinui, you have to write every line slanting, one line, the top line is enough. Mr. Brewer's mashma, the miyikidin, we're not choishes for this chumrah, because Ksav Mashita, our writing is not Uman. So he says, the minig is, some do it, but Lamaisa miyikidin, you could write Ksav Mashita, our writing in English or Yiddish, whatever it is, without a shinui. The minig is to write the top line, and that's fine the way it is. Good. Let's move on to another shaila, which is also obviously important, and that is the very common question when a child wants to color, or wants to scribble, wants to write. So one thing we have to understand is going to be as we proceed. In all of our halachas, Hilchas Shabbos, Hilchas Yom Tov, Hilchas Chol Hamoed, ksiv is lav after writing a article. The Rambam says in the Magen Avraham in Shin Mem, Siv Kat and Vav, and Zayin quotes it twice. Hatzar Tzura, if someone makes a picture, is also ksiva. Because ksiva is lav dafka lettering. Ksiva is something that of significance. So writing, numbers, and pictures, drawings is also ksiva. So now the shaila is, a child wants to color, so that might be like tzar tzura. But the answer to that is, wait a second, it has our combination. The child is no artist, so it's a ma'isa hedjit, and lamaisa, it's a tzarech moyed. He wants to enjoy coloring. And that's why I saw a number of poskim say this, that lamaisa, this is considered a tzarech moyed. Don't forget the Mechab and Taf Kuf Yud Ches Sif Aleph says children are allowed to play ball on Yom Tiv, even though we don't carry shaloi l'tzarech. But lamaisa, playing is a tzarech. So drawing, recreation is a tzarech. And that's why all the Heintige Pais can point out that a child is allowed to draw, that's considered a tzarech of the moyed and a ma'isa hedjit. Now, some question, where's the chinuch? Because the ma'isa, when he's old, he's not going to be able to color. But the answer is true, but right now he's a cotton. So hopefully he won't do that when he's older. But now, if it's considered a tzarech moyed for him, so why is that mutter? The only thing I saw, very lomdashach einfall, the Avnei Yashvin Chelik Alf Simon Kuf Yud, he comes from a different angle why coloring is a problem. Because writing is writing, but coloring, the child and his limited capabilities, for the child, coloring is a ma'isuman. He's trying to be he's an artist. Of course, the childish artist. but he's trying to simulate, he's trying to be like a childish artist. So maybe the actual coloring is always considered a ma'isa uman. Okay, if you like this svara, fine. I think the poskim understood that he's not trying to be an artist, trying to have some fun. So it's not a ma'isa uman. The only issue we could say is, which might be more of a tzad to be makel, because the typical coloring book comes with the outline, basically the border, and you just fill it in. So it could be you could look at the picture before he draws, it's written already, because the outline is there. Where do I have such a svara? So I'll tell you, very good svara. When a sefer is written, so they try to leave the last lettering for those that want to machabed them or give money, whatever it is. So the sefer typically will write the borders, the outline before Yom Tiv, and if they have to give it on Chol Hamoed, it's always better to write before Yom Tiv. That's better. But let's say they left out a few letterings, so there are those that are makel as long as the outline was made before Yom Tiv, because it's considered ksiva. And that was the Shur Knesset Gedolah, and Al Simon says this. If the actual letter itself, the border is there, so filling in is only secondary. So Lamaisa, this is why I think the minig ha'olam is to allow a child to color. Now, if someone feels that let my child have a chinuch, Lamaisa we don't write a Chol Hamoed, fine, I can understand that. But mi'ikidin, it's vadei mutter to write and to color on Chol Hamoed. The Shevet HaKosi in Chelik Aleph Kuf Samaches says what the child scribbles is zichur mutter. Scribbling is not artist, and it's not writing. A puzzle or Scrabble. This is ready for adults. So the emphasis, the Shmir Shabbos in Hilchos Shabbos, Siman Tezai in Sif Chav Dalet says a Scrabble that you just put the lettering one next to the other, but you don't put it in a frame is not ksiva, because it has no permanence. But if you put it into a frame, or a puzzle goes into a frame and it stays, that's asa on Shabbos al ksiva. Someone that makes a nice puzzle with a picture is sartzura. It's not just he put pieces next to the other, it's interlocking, and it's also supported by the frame. So why should it be mutter to make a puzzle? Why should it be mutter to play Scrabble? So maybe it's not. But there is a very important Ramah in our Simon Siv Zayin. The Ramah says, Luchay shel shaiva mutter lichtoiv v'she'enoi ksav hamiskayim. The Ramah is introducing us to an important heta, and that's called a ksav she'ena miskayim. If the lettering does not last, or as we'll soon see, you don't make it to last, that's not a ksiva. Now, even though on Shabbos ksav she'ena miskayim is still asa, midrabanan at least, but it comes to Chol Hamoed, there's a special heta of a ksiva she'ena miskayim. And again, you have to realize Shabbos is a chiyuv skila. Yom Tov is less than Shabbos, is a lav. Chol Hamoed is machlokes if it's d'oraisa d'rabbanan, and much more malachas and mutter Chol Hamoed than on Shabbos. So here the poskim make this distinction, that even though a ksav she'ena miskayim on Shabbos is not mutter, or Yom Tov is not mutter, but Chol Hamoed, a ksiva she'ena miskayemes, would be mutter. Now the Mishnah Berurah gives other examples which you don't have today, but I'll tell you an interesting example that is negeya today, and you see a little bit of an insight of what it means ksav she'ena miskayemes. Rav Moshe in the Tshuvas that's printed in the back of the sefer Zichron Shloima on Chol Hamoed, Ois Chav Ches and Chav Tes was asked a question to us is strange, but it's still negay, believe it or not. For those out-of-town communities that have what's called a day school as opposed to a yeshiva, they have school on Chol Hamoed, because the other option is not that they're going to go to listen to a shiur on Chol Hamoed. The children run around, do nothing, and the whole exposure to Yiddishkeit is so brief. There's so little time that they have day school on Chol Hamoed. So the Yesem Moshe first said, okay, he says, Avada is it better than what they do there. But then he said also, you're allowed to write on a blackboard. See, a blackboard is a ksiva she'ena miskayemes. Now the emes is, a blackboard, if you don't touch it, it probably will last. But the mere fact that you don't write it to keep, every day is a new lesson, a new blackboard. So Moshe felt that would be a ksiva she'ena miskayemes. Now the truth is, though, the use the chalk is basically a powder on the board. Who said it lasts that long? But even that's not his point. If you don't make it to stay, that would not be a problem on Chol Hamoed. So Lamaisa, the poskim, I saw the Ber Moshe, Chelik Zayin Semakufi says, blackboard, pashit mutter, combination, Maisa Hedjit, and Tzarech Hamoed. But the Moshe does it, and other places can spell this out. Shmir Shabbos says it as well. Even though b'chefza, it could last on a blackboard. But if you made it to erase, it doesn't have a Maisa Uman to it. You see? It's not a Maisa Uman if you're going to erase it the next day. So the Shmir Shabbos in Samach Vav of Chavtes also says a blackboard is okay. The Machzor Eliyahu and other places can apply this to an interesting example, and that is lettering on a cake. Let's say you have a birthday on Chol Hamoed or going into Yom Tov, or you want to send a cake with a Simchas Yom Tov inscription. So the Paiskim say, that's the Shmir Shabbos says that, Samach Vav Chavtes, that writing lettering on cake would be mutter for two reasons. Number one, it has our combination. It's a Ma'aseh Hedjit. Where you do it, unless you have dafka artistic work, but just the scribbling happy birthday is Ma'aseh Hedjit, and also it's Chol Hamoed. Also, some say it's an iksiv she'eina miskayemes, because the Ma'aseh you're not going to keep it too much longer. So the Ma'aseh, that's the psak. The Machzor Eliyahu says it in Chelik Beis Amid Reish Mem Zayin. He says it's Tlasa L'Tevusa, Ma'aseh Hedjit, Eina Miskayim, and Tzarech Yom Tov. I did see a chiddush, the Shevet HaKasi in Aleph Kuf Samaches. He says playing with a puzzle, even a puzzle that's a few hundred pieces, which is a Ma'aseh, which you're doing, and you're doing it nicely. He says, but a puzzle by definition is Eina Miskayim, because you don't put it up on the wall, you take it apart, you do it again. So there is a tzati mekel by Scrabble and or puzzles, even though on Shabbos we're machmir, but on Chol Hamoed we have a special heta of ksiva she'eina miskayemes. Another important question I should mention is what's right on Chol Hamoed. That's something not for today's shir, but I should remind you what the Kolb Mr. Bura quotes the Kolboy, that he quotes the Yishalmi first, that the Yishalmi says that really the only reason that they asked Sid Malacha is so we should sit and learn. But now that people do things inappropriate for Chol Hamoed, it's better to do Malacha than do things inappropriate for Chol Hamoed. Mr. Bura quotes the Kolboy that the Issa of Schaik is more than Malacha, because the Bernstein want the Chol Hamoed should be a Moed. So again, we're talking about games, and I'm talking when it's appropriate, of course, when it's not a steer to chidushei Chol Hamoed. There is a heta, something that's eina miskayemes. Another question, I had this question once. I was in a park with my children, right over here, close by, in Prospect Park, and someone asked me, there was a guy, obviously he was an artist, he was a sketch actually, he was doing sketch, he would have this family sit down, and he would make a sketch of the whole family. Okay, and he charged, God, it wasn't that expensive. So the fellow made a cheshbon, keep the kids busy for a while, and they'll go home, they'll be, it's a worthwhile investment. So you have a guy making a drawing, a sketch of a family, a Yiddish family. Is that mutar Chol Hamoed? So this is problem, because Lamaisa, this is a Maisa Uman. I'll say, I'm not doing it, the guy is doing it. True. But Mechaber says in no uncertain terms, in Tafkuf Mem Gimel Sif Aleph, Kol Davar She'asa L'Asoisai, what a Yid can't do, Asa Loima L'Ein Yehudi L'Asoisai. So the Mishnah Berurah, Chazal made this Issa of Amir La'akum, because Chazal wanted us to treat Chol Hamoed like a regular Yom Tov. So yes, there is an Issa Amir La'akum on Chol Hamoed. So Oy Bazoi, what should be the heta? The guy is doing a Maisa Uman. He's doing it for you. Now, Lamaisa, if the guy, for some reason, which never happens, come out, he first makes the picture without telling you, and then he wants to sell it to you. No, maybe that you could do, because he made a daita denafshe. But this, I take a story, Abelski in the Shulchan Alevi, Amud Kuf Membei says, if the guy approaches you, should I do it? So don't say, well, he's doing it for himself to make money. True. That's why he's doing it. He's not doing it lishma, but he's doing it for you. So it's a daita de Yisrael. So this would be a problem of ksiva aydi akum on Chol Hamoed. A very common question in many forms is writing a sign, a maidah. For example, a person had a baby, he's making a kiddush, wants to put up a sign, a change of the schedule in the shiurim, or he's making a shalom zacha, or a shavas haveda. A person sitting down with a pen and paper and writing a sign of any sort. So the first klal is, which is obvious, that if you could do it on Erev Yom Tiv or before Yom Tiv, do it. I mean, to put up a sign about a bar mitzvah is wrong because you have 13 years to prepare for this. You don't have to wait till every Yom on Chol Hamoed. But let's say you found an Aveda or Laila Lavaya. So the Shmir Shabbos in Samach Zayin Kuf Beidal in Lavaya. I saw also other poskim say this is something that's not pre-planned. Avad, it's mutter to put up a sign. We'll soon talk about printing it out with a computer, but let's talk about writing. Of course, in that case, you don't really need a shinui, unless you want to be chayshish for the shita. The aksav mashita is like a ma'isa umah. If someone found an aveda, so this is important to mention, when you find an aveda, the main thing is put it up a sign right away. People ask each other, I found something, should I put up a sign? I said, when did you find it? 3 months ago. What are you thinking? The fellow goes back day after day looking if there's a sign, no sign. You find a Aveda, put up a sign, take it from Miyad. The person hopefully will come back, he'll look for it, he'll find it. But here's the question, now was Chol Hamoed, should I wait till after Yom Tov? The answer is no, don't. Because first of all, the person will come back looking and there's no sign, maybe no one found it. Worse yet, he came just to be by his parents for Yom Tov, he's going back Matzah Yom Tov, you're going to put it up the next day? It's too late. And I found probably half a dozen poskim, the Shmir Shabbos, the Orchos Rabbeinu of the Stipler, and all say this Yesod, Shabbos Aveda Kachos says this as well, that if you have an Aveda, put up a sign right away. That's the frumkeit in his Zehirus in Menad Mechaveira. Hopefully the fellow will come back, he'll look for it, he'll look for the sign, but don't wait till after Yom to put up the sign. That's a davar or avod, which you don't even need. The real heta is Chol Hamoed and a ma'aseh hedjed. Question, someone comes to your door, he rings the bell, registered mail. See, it used to be also when they delivered packages, they want you to sign. But today, since COVID, they just drop it and run. So basically, it's still negeya. If you have registered mail, they want you to sign. So the emes is, if you need that mail or that package on Chol Hamoed or Yom Tov, we're back to the combination of Chol Hamoed and a ma'aseh hedjed. But if you feel uncomfortable, rather this always works, you tell them, it's my holiday today, I can't sign this. So typically you'll say, well, I don't want to come back, could I do it? You can say, you can do what you want. It's up to you. I can't do it, you can do what you want. If he decides to sign your name, first has to know your name, that's taka adaita de nafshe. He's not doing it for you, he's doing it because he doesn't want to come back. So if you give the job to him and he's doing it for himself, that's adaita de nafshe. But really, you don't need that heta. If you're signing a Chol Hamoed, it's a Chol Hamoed, a ma'aseh hedjed. If you want to make a signature with a shinui, and that's also good because they don't really check the signatures, this would be a simple heta of Chol Hamoed and a ma'aseh hedjed. Can a person write a check on Chol Hamoed? So the emes is a check when there's needed to buy something for Yom Tov, to give tzedakah certainly, that would be a simple combination of Chol Hamoed and a ma'aseh hedjed. But I saw, and it's really pashit, that really the heter of writing a check is a din HaMishnah. Which Mishnah? They didn't have checks in those days, but they did have. They had something called the shtar choiv. And the Mishnah, and the way the Shulchan Aruch learns up the Mishnah, if you can't wait to write the shtar choiv till after Yom Tov, you're allowed to write the shtar choiv on Chol Hamoed, because it's a ksiva hedjit, and it's a tzorech of the Yom Tov. So a check, if you don't have cash or you don't want to use your cash, if there's a reason why you want to write a check is a regular ma'aseh hedjed and Chol Hamoed and vadei mutter. That the Shmir Shabbos and Samach Vav Yud Aleph, Rabelski and Shulchan Alevi, Amid Kuf Mem Dalet adds, if you want to pay your worker, but you have a titin schari, you don't have the cash. It's also, that's a dvar mitzvah, the Debetzina Rav and Zayin Lamed Zayin and Rav Moshe in the back of the Chol Hamoed sefer, writing a check for tzedakah, because now you want to give, maybe after Yom Tov, it might even be a davar avod, you might forget. And I must mention, if the person wants a receipt, so the collector should give him a receipt. Writing a receipt is mutter. It's the same Chol Hamoed and ma'aseh hedjed. So basically, when something is needed to be written, that would be the regular heta of a Chol Hamoed. The next group of questions is both fascinating and challenging, and I guess a geschmack also. And that is this. The whole sugya of writing today is almost irrelevant, because who writes today? We used to give a mashal of a tzorech Yom Tov, to write a tzorech Yom Tov, that you're allowed to write directions how to go to the amusement park. But today, directions, what does that mean? And who writes directions? Everything is the GPS, a printout. So the shaila is, how do we translate all of our halachas of today to a whole new world that writing is on a screen, writing is a picture on a screen, it's a printout, a telephone is no longer a rotary phone, you make a phone call, you have a bunch of numbers, and there's an email, and there's a fax, and there's countless shilas that are no longer writing with pen and paper. How do we look at the technology that has brought ksiva to a whole different level? So really the question is, number one, when I write, quote unquote, when I make a report, I'm writing a shtickle Torah on a computer, is that ksiva? Before I print it out, is that considered ksiva? Because I'm putting it onto a computer? And the question number two is, let's say I have a beautiful picture. I was someplace, I saw the Floyes, I took a picture, it's mamish a masterpiece, the picture. And I have it on my computer. And someone comes to visit a Chol Hamoed, you know what, I'm going to give you a beautiful picture, you'll take it home, it's gorgeous. And you make a printout of that picture. So think about it. It's just pressing a button. But what comes out? A masterful Maisa Uman. It's a picture, it's a gorgeous picture. So the question in all of these is, how do we apply Hilchos Ksiva, Taf Kuf, Mem Hey, and Shulchan Aruch to the contemporary shilas of Ksiva? So basically, there are two parts of every malacha. The Pa'ula, the action, and the Teitzah. For example, a sefer, the Pa'ula is writing with Safras. The Teitzah is a masterful work. It's a Sefer Torah. It always was both that made up a Maisa Uman. Now the Shaila is, today we have a world, it's typical of the world we live in, the instant society. You press a button and you have everything you want instantly. So now we have that you could press a button that every child could do, and the outcome, the printout, is magnificent, is a Maisa Uman. How do you look at Ksiva in our society? Like the way the Chutshani puts it, you have a tzira muflas, al yedei lechitzas kaftar. You press a button. Any child knows how to press a button. If you look at the Pa'ula, then a button is not a Maisa Uman. If you look at the outcome, the Teitzah, it very much is. How do you look at our Ksiva in Tafshin Pevav? So one thing I want to make a point, and this is Pashut. On Shabbos, this has no bearing whatsoever. Shabbos is totally in Meleches Machshavas. So if you have two Isiyas that have meaning, it's awesome. Let's make it how you do it. There's no din of Maisa Uman on Shabbos. But since Chol Hamoed is governed, I should say, by Maisa Uman, how do you define Maisa Uman? So this is challenging because you have to find a precedent for something that didn't exist. But that's the Nitzchis of Torah. Everything is in the Torah HaKadosh. Listen to a few lines of the Buchacha and Eishel Avram in our Simon Tavkuf Memhei. So he writes, Nira, Shechoisim Hanor Glasois, B'mashekoirin, he could use their name, Trivaks, I don't have Trivaks, but he's talking about a stamp. You have a person that's a Chashavir, he has a stamp, he stamps his name, and there is Av Bezin here, his address. But let's say you have a stamp that makes a nice picture. So he declares, using this stamp on Shabbos is a Vada B'Chilul Shabbos. It's a Davar Miskayim, and it's a Ksiva. But then he says, Lagabi Chol Hamoed, Pashit Dahavilei Meleches Hedjid. Using a stamp and making a beautiful picture or beautiful writing is a Maisa Hedjid. Look at it. No. Befrat, Shekivan Shekol Hedjid Yochalas is a Choysim Mamish, K'mo Yisai or Uman, Kil Tuva, Miksiva Tama, that's Yeshba Uman. What he's saying is that if you just press it and it becomes a Maisa Uman, it still remains a Maisa Hedjid. Because anybody could do it by just pressing. So he's not talking about a computer, but the closest thing is a chaysim, a seal. And he says, Pashut, it's a Maisa Hedjid. Now we could add Iboyis a Makra, Iboyis a Masvar. First of all, the Yisoid of Chol Hamoed, Chazal Asid Malacha. Or better, Chazal Asid Maisa Uman. How do you touch the word Maisa Uman? The action, the work of an Uman. This is not a work of an Uman. Your child could press the stamp and make a ksiva. You'll say, wait a second, but you're not going to blow this by me. Because in a different Hilchas Chol Hamoed, we see even a press of the button is awesome. Even today. What am I talking about? The issa of laundering, of washing laundry on Chol Hamoed. Where there's an issa chum based on a din mishnah, you can't make laundry on Chol Hamoed. The poskim say today, even though it's only a press of the button, it's no longer scrubbing and brushing and wringing it out. It's still awesome. It's only a press of the button. Obviously, press of the button is also awesome. But there's not a raya klal to our sugya. Because Hilchos laundering, as the Mishnah says, is not asal tzmalachav. Again, it's a tzarech yamtiv. Why is it? As covered yamtiv, shleikanis the yamtiv kishum novel. If he's not going to make laundry on before yamtiv, he won't make laundry. He has more time Chol Hamoed and be dressed the first to his yamtiv with dirty clothing. So the issa is not the pu'ula at all. The issa is to make laundry before yamtiv. So who cares how you do it, with the press of a button or laundry it? Varaya, the poskim say, let's say you have a heter to wash your children or grandchildren's clothing because they need it for Chol Hamoed. So once you're doing it, can I throw in my own clothing? The answer is no. It's not a din in the issa malacha. It's the din is Chazal didn't want laundry to take place. So now we're back to our original question, that how do we look at Chol Hamoed? Do we look at it, the Pu'ula Teitzah? We saw a svara. It's totally in the Pu'ula. We said the word Ma'isa Uman, Ma'isa Hedi, which got in the Lashon HaGemara, Shulchan Aruch quotes it, Rishonim quoted. Ma'isa sounds like it's the action. But I found something even more beautiful in a Chashav Sefer on Hilchos Chol Hamoed, the Shmiras Hamoed Kolchasa, Amid Pei Zayin. He has Barichas, but he says that the Chazal asked Ma'isa Uman for two reasons: the Tircha Shabai, and because it's a Malacha Chashuva. And now he proves it, Ayin Sham. Both of those reasons do not apply to a press of a button. It's not a Tircha, it's not a Malacha Chashuva. Also, I should mention, the Trumas Hadeshin explained that the Issa of Ma'isa Uman is based because we have to know who's doing the Issa. If you have a professional involved, that's a problem. No, like that. Today's press of the button, you don't need a professional. So the Ma'isa, I also must mention that by cotton, that Yuram Beis, the Gemara says the lashon of Ma'isa Uman. Rashi says the lav mutla sois v'chal hamoed, the lav Ma'isa Umnesu. It's not an action of an uman. The Rash Ben Yassim, one of the Rishonim on Ma'ikatan, shekol adam yachal asoisai. You don't need a skill. Anybody could do it. And if that's the case, there's definitely svara to say it's totally in the pool, not in the teitzah. Now, however, I want to mention one more point before we apply this on Ma'isa, and that is there is a indication, one of the Gedolei Kadmoinim, that's a sefer Amarka, one of the Kadmoinim, that he l'chayre says you go after the teitzah. Now, this is not my mevinus at all, but all the poskim discussed the shayla point to an Amarka. The Amarka, again, was one of the Kadmoinim. The El Yerabba in Tov Samach Siv Vav, that's Hilchas Pesach. The minig was, you see in the Gemara, they used to make lettering on a matzah, which on Yom Tov you can't do, but Lamaisa, they made lettering before Yom Tov, they had to make sure that one didn't become chametz. So Zokter Keach and Siman Reish Pei, those that make lettering on matzah with a defus, even though Lagabi get a defus, you can't print the get, it has to be written. Tfus is not a ksiva, but on Yom Tov, you can't use a tfus to make a imprint on the matzah, because that's considered ksiva. Okay? So then he adds Zokta Amarkel. I got it sorted inside. It's one of the svarim that comes with other all the kadmonim all together. Zokta Amarkel. He says Hu Adin on Chol Hamoed. Afil b'Chol Hamoed is awesome. So the Markel is saying regarding printing into food that it's awesome. Why is it awesome? Must be you go basa the teitzah. Now, however, the Machzeliyo in Chelik Beis Amid Reish Mem Zayin and that Sefer Shmiras Moed Kuf Tzadikei both prove that it can't be, because the Al Yerab himself holds differently. Must be the reason why the Markel is answering it is only because it's not enough of a tzarech Yom Tov or Chol Hamoed. Because you don't need the lettering. So Chazal said it has to be a tzarech, but it's not enough of a tzarech. So we have Iboyisei Mikra, Iboyisei Mesvara, the Lashon of Maisa Uman, and the Svara of it. So basically we could say that this is convincing enough. But I should mention, there's a Kamada Beferish Gemara to this Raya. The Mechaba in Tafkov Mem Siv Gimel quotes a Gemara that you're not allowed to repair a leak in a roof when it's Seirich, unless it's Davar Avod. Let's say it's not raining, so it's now no problem. There's a crack in the roof. You can't repair it. Zokti Chaba Tafkov Mem Gimel, based on a Gemara, based on Rishonim. If you could fix it, let's say there's a little hole, and with your foot you push a little bit of the dried leaves and you push it in to the hole and it repairs it, it's mutter. Zokti Mishnah Beferish. Why? Even though now it's perfectly fixed, so you did a good job, but how'd you do it? You didn't come with your tools, you came with your foot and you pushed this something in. That's not Maisa Uman. So he's spelling out, you did a Teitzah of a Maisa Uman. But how did you do it? How was the Pula? Pula was Hedjed, it's Mutter. So that's where we're very, very comfortable saying, even if the Markel is a Manda Amma Fakert, but there's definitely what to be Saimach on. We have the Buchachi, we have this earlier source, that you look at how it's done. A press of the button is not at all a Maisa Uman. Now, how do we apply this to Maisa? So I'll tell you first an outdated Shaila, and that is what's called a typewriter. In Yeshiva, the boys say, what's that? But a typewriter is the forerunner of a computer. Someone asked Rav Moshe in the Chuvas in the back of the sefer Zichron Shleima, are you allowed to write on Chol Hamoed with a typewriter? So Moshe says it's mutter, because Lamaisa, it's not a Maisa Uman pressing a bunch of buttons. So Moshe is identifying a typewriter as a Maisa Hedjit. It's a very nice, sophisticated writing, but you look at the Pu'ula, not the Teitzah, and the Pu'ula is very simple. Now Lamaisa, some people don't know how to type. But for that, I saw a beautiful Yisoid of Rabbi Shlomo Zalman in Shulchan Shloima, Tafkov Mem Hey, in Sif Cotton Bays, and Imam explains Rav Moshe's tshuva in a beautiful way. He says, Lamaisa, once you're typing, there's no difference how you do it. It comes out the same. So Novas, the only thing the Uman does, he could type much faster. See, when someone knows how to type with all his 10 fingers without looking, he could type quickly. But it's the one that's doing it slowly, like a child. He goes and he makes his name. Takes him a half hour, but it doesn't make a difference because the outcome is the same outcome. So you're just doing it slower, but the same button that's pressed by a child is pressed by a professional. So the way he puts it is, that's the way you could tell if something is a Maisa Uman, because after all the work is done, is it the same outcome? Yes. Then that's a Maisa Hedjed. Because even though you press the button, does it faster, slower? So the fact that it's faster or slower doesn't impact it being a Maisa Uman. All you have to do is press the A and press the next letter until you write your name. So he says the fact that it comes out the same, and it's just the speed of it that makes a difference. I'll give a better mashal. You have an artist, so his every stroke is professional. A non-professional, you look at it, it's not an artist. But here, it's pressing buttons. So if you do it quickly or slowly, it's the same pressing buttons. So this is a perfect example of a Maisa Hedjit, even though you look at it, the Teitzah is very much professional. And Rav Moshe held that's mut. So the Maisa, Rav Shlomo Zalman and Rav Moshe seem to assume that our Chakira, if you look at the Pu'ula Teitzah, the answer is you look at the Pu'ula. Typewriter is the best mashal to that question. The Shevet Alevi, Chelik Hey, Simen Lamed Zayin, Chelik Vav, Simen Lamed Zayin, Yabi Oima, and Ches Mem Ches, all seem to also say the Ikis look at the Pu'ula. If you need a professional to do it, that's Uman. If not, it's a Maisa Hedjit. Now, some Choshes talk about that, Amarkel, and they say, no, the Pasha says you look at the Teitzah. But I'll tell you something interesting, you'll see Minehu Bey. Rabbi Yakov Kamenetsky, also a tshuva in the back of that sefer in Zichron Shleima, in Simen Yud Gimel, it's Amud 17 of the tshuvas there. Rabbi Yakov was asked about using a Polaroid camera. Again, this is outdated now. I think they brought it back a little bit. But basically, it was a regular camera. You pressed the button, you took a picture. Out came a picture, but it wasn't yet developed. It developed on the spot. And after you waited for a moment, it came out a beautiful picture. So Rabbi Yakov was asked about using a Polaroid camera on Chol Hamoed. Rabbi Yakov said, that's a Maisa Uman. It's a press of the button. Every child can take a picture. So obviously he held that the Issa of Uman is Taitzah. Rav Moshe, in that same sefer, it's page 168, was asked about a Polaroid, and he said it's mutter because it's a Maisa Hedjah. In that same tshuva, Rav Moshe said you're allowed to use a Polaroid, and you're allowed to use in the same sefer, Polaroid is mutter and a typewriter is mutter. Rabbi Yankov's tshuva is a short tshuva. You're not allowed to use a Polaroid camera, and you're not allowed to use a typewriter. With the shitasa. If you hold Pa'ula as Asa, then this is Pa'ula, then a Polaroid camera and a typewriter is mutter. If you hold Teitzah the Issa, then both are Asa. So it's really a machlokes of Kadmoinim and Rabbi Yakov and Moshe how to look at the malacha of Chol Hamoed, Pula or Teitzah. But as we showed, most poskim seem to feel that you look at the Pa'ula. But I must mention, some are machmir. There are those that look at it, they treat it like a Maisa Uman, but they're still a heter davar ava. Don't forget. I should mention the lashon of Rami Pano in the Tshuva Siman Kuf Ches. Yesh Chol Hamoed ma'an schar lo yisupuk. There is an unquestionable schar for Chol Hamoed. B'asoymach ha'menusei. If someone's careful with Chol Hamoed because he knows the gaz of Chol Hamoed, so his lashon is that he's muftach l'schus. He'll definitely get a schus. So again, people feel, but the Maisa, it comes out nice, good. So treat it like a davar, like a Maisa Uman, but they still had the davar Avod, as we'll soon see. I should mention another point that La Maisa, regarding Chol Hamoed, some feel that if you're going to look at this strictly, press the button, this mutter, before long people have entire factories open on Chol Hamoed. Because today, factories are also press the button. So some want to keep it basically just a ksiva, those type of things, but to go make a klal, Chol Hamoed is totally in Pu'ula, got to be very careful. You have to have a chacham ein b'roisha to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. If someone wants to know, can he go to the bank if he needs the money? Are you allowed to go to the bank of Chol Hamoed? Can he ask for a receipt? So here is an interesting question, because you're not going to write up the receipt. You press a button and out comes the receipt. So if someone feels he needs it for his records and he can't go without it, avada, you can rely on the sheet that it's a press of the button, it's a Maisa Hedjit. So Maisa Hedjit is Tzoyrech Moyed, and it's fine. That's a good example. Again, asking for a receipt for a check, or for a check for tzedakah, it's also fine. What I found really gishmak, because again, it's a better understanding of the sugya in the Rav Shlomo Shlomo, Hilchos Chol Hamoed, Amid Kuf Nun Vav. He was asked when then was the chiddush about a fax, sending a fax on Chol Hamoed. So Rav Zalman said that the emes is there is such advance in technology in a fax, no doubt about it. It's mamish umandik. But what are you doing? You're not creating the fax. You're just pressing a button. So even though the fax, and today computers even more so, is a magnificent Maisa Uman, but what are you doing? You're not doing the Maisa Uman. You're pressing a button. So he says a fax and a computer and all these things are employing unbelievable Maisa Uman. But at the end of the day, it's a regular press of the button. It still remains a Maisa Hedjit. So sending a fax is fine. The only thing is the person on the other end, can he print it out? So that's totally in Maisa Hedjit. If it's a Tzarech Moed, it's mutter. Making a copy, a photostat they call it. Now there's more fancy names, but a printout of a computer. A photostat, you want to copy a page of a sefer. You're going on a Chol Hamoed, you want to take along the Blatt Gemara. So these are all examples of our Chakira. If you look at the Pu'ula, it's a Maisa Hedjit. Even though it comes out a beautiful Blatt Gemara with the newest print, that might be an Uman originally printing that Blatt. But reprinting it is a Maisa Hedjit. I should mention that writing on Chol Hamoed we try to avoid, but writing for chidushei Torah, not only is mutter, but the Taz and Tafkuf Memhesi, if you see Yud Gimel said that if you don't do it, You don't write down the chiddush thing you remember till after Yom Tiv. Ein lecha davar ha'avod gadol mizeh shema'abid zman. You're going to have to relearn the sugya. Hopefully you'll remember, if you don't remember, it's even worse. And writing Chol Hamoed, chidushei Torah, there's a beautiful true min hashamayim. One of the Rishonim asked min hashamayim, and Simon Lam Beis, he asked, can we write a chiddush that we machadash on Chol Hamoed? I'm afraid I might forget. So the response was, Oyev Hashem shiurim b'tzonim halacha. Those shiurim that are sitting and learning on Chol Hamoed, on Nehav v'nechemot v'nei melech ha'elyon, and he says dadvarim v'machshavas heim amagolius yikarais be'einav yizbarach. And if you're allowed to write because davar over a few dollars, how much more if you might lose those avedas hamagolius hayikaras haheim? So when a person has a chiddush, something that he's afraid we might forget till after Yom Tiv, by all means make sure to write it down. Using email in any form, appropriately of course. Again, sending email is no shayla. The one receiving it, to print it out, if it would be a tzorech moyed, we're assuming it's a davar, it's a ma'aseh hedjed, and it's mut. Which should never be negeya, but if someone has to go for an X-ray or MRI, so it's interesting. There used to be actually the X-ray itself is again a press of the button. But the poskim say, since you have to interpret, you have to decipher, you have to understand it, so that you need an uman to look at it. So it becomes a ksav of an uman in the fact that no one can read it unless you know how to look. So b'chlal, we don't go to appointments unless it's chasham necessary. But basically, the point is that when someone has a need for an X-ray, if it can wait till after Yom Tov, about it should wait. If he's afraid that by waiting, he might not get an appointment for another 3 months, so it's davar avod. So even if it's a uman, davar avod is mutter. The next group of questions are a little more challenging, but in a certain sense a little more simple. And that is, can I use a computer? Let's say I want to write something in my computer. I will not print it out until after Yom Tov. Till now we spoke about print out without writing. Now it's fakert. I'm going to sit down and write a whole shtickle Torah. And I'll print it out after Yom Tov, or I'm writing out an article, whatever it is. How do you look at printing on a computer without printing it out? You see, a typewriter was one and the same. But can I write something, enter information, that's not necessarily learning. Maybe it's not ksiva. So Lamaisa, if you think about it, that if there's no ksiva, how could it be asal ksiva? Now, of course, using a computer involves putting it on and electricity, but that's Yom Tov is asa. But this is not Yom Tov. And this is enough of a tzarech Yom Tov, you want to write something down. So it seems the consensus of the poskim is that this is not considered ksiva. If you want to say it is ksiva, you know what it really is in a certain sense? A ksiva she'eina miskayemes. Because if you have a screensaver, it doesn't stay too long. So even though you could retrieve it, but it's yet a ksiva that it doesn't last. So the poskim seem to say that if you just keep it to writing, whatever, typing onto the computer, that's not a ksiva. What I saw in another chashuv sefer on the Chol Hamoed, Chasei is called, one of the first svarim on Chol Hamoed, he says a fascinating mashal. He said, let's say you have on Sukkot, you have a Noi Sukkah, Sukkah's Teish Shivas Yamim. It's in a beautiful sign, and you plug it into the wall, and it lights up the letters, Sukkah's Teish Shivas Yamim. Hayal al Adas, it's considered ksiva. It's all written, but it's illuminating it. So he explained, if you know the way the computer works, there is no ksiva on a computer screen. It's thousands of pixels that are being constantly shot a little bit of electricity, and mumcha told me, I wouldn't believe it, but a mumcha told me within a minute there are thousands of times that it's going again. But there is no ksiva on a computer screen. Now whether you understood or not is irrelevant, but there is no ksiva on a computer screen. It's lights that is constantly being dischadish again a few hundred times per minute, but there's no ksiva. If there's no ksiva, so how could it be asa? That's why Lamaisa, the B'tzina Rav, he asked about using a calculator. He says it's a Ma'isa Hedjit, and it's Tzarech Hamoed, but it's not even a Ksiva. Also, again, the fact that it's Eina Miskayemes. So basically, someone asked me, can I use my cell phone on Chol Hamoed? I go, why not? Because I'm making numbers. Okay, you are. But Lamaisa, the numbers is not a Ksiva. You didn't print it out. A camera, a digital, if you don't print it out, there's no ksiva. It's all the same yesod. Now, a good question would be, if I have to write something down, or if I do, I could also enter the computer, which is less of a shayla on Chol Hamoed. The answer is, believe it or not, on a computer. There's no ksiva. Now, if I care, let's say you need some information. So either you can have a printout from the computer, or you'll write it with your hand. So if you're convinced that a computer printout is a ma'isa hedget, you're okay. If you're questionable, maybe it's a ma'isa uman, it might be better to write, because that's a regular ksiv mashaitim. And let me leave this one last shaila, actually two last shaila, fascinating shailas. We once had the shaila, and the first time I saw it, I was horrified. Someone had a computer, and on the screen it said that the opening, the beginning of it, or Judaic screen, it was Yud K Vav K in large, bold oisius. So you want to know, could you erase it? Because this is something new. So that time, there was the Machaba, the Shmir Shabbos was in America, and he gave a share for Rabbanim, and somebody asked him this shaila about erasing a computer. Today you have people daven on their phone. I guess if there's a Shem Hashem, can you erase it? How do they check Sifrei Torah on a screen? They have to erase the Shem Hashem. So they asked the Shmir Shabbos, are you allowed to erase it as Mechika Shem Hashem? So he says, Nish kan ksivas, azoy, 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 azoy. That's what he said. I remember like yesterday. What does he mean to say? This Yisoid. And Abshtein Bezalman in the Tzoya, Chelik Zayin, Amar Kufla Metes, was asked this shaila, and he says, you know what it's like? It's like someone makes Shem Hashem with different lights. It's beautiful. The computer is not a ksiva. It's azoy, azoy, azoy with thousands of pixels. That's not ksiva. And one last question, someone asked me once to record a shiur that someone was giving on Chol Hamoed, but he was worried about ksiva because he's imprinting onto the magnetic wave on the recorder the speaking. And he told me he found the sefer that's machmer. I said, I have to see this. So he brought me one of the Heintik Svarim that he says the following: just like I can't write on Chol Hamoed or Shabbos or Yom Tov, I can't write Chinese or Braille. I can't read Chinese or Braille, but who cares? As long as the kasiva for somebody, it's awesome. So he wants to say, the Sefer wants to say, so recording something is some type of lettering that can be translated into a shiur. So it's got to be ksiva. But he's wrong. Because Braille and Chinese is lettering. And this is the magnetic waves. If it's no ksiva, there's no issa. Guten Tag and Afreil Yom Tov to you all. It's a little, yeah. Go ahead.
Shame irgend shiur Torah like a big ashakach to dismiss for today's shiur, like a big ashakach to ritzig dov zelfrein for sponsoring today's shiur the nishmas imoy his alta etje bas for nosa nota la shalom yotzai tzrei yirav nisa. Also shiurs on the nishmas Isha Rezel bas for Yitzchak la shalom yotzai. It's also today yirav nisa tenish same to us Chaim. Have the great schos sponsoring a shiur. Call Irgun Shiur Torah 718-851-8651. Email ist@yeshiva.com. Kananya Manakash Emma Otzer Shpochel the Zakes is the Shol Fikach. Heben und Zeit mit Shnam alle neu Chofetz am Anzug gejagt und Torah Yade. So whoever didn't have a chance to write down the Piskei Halachos during the shiur, there'll be a sikkim on the shiur writing on Chol Hamoed.
This chazor we learned today, Be'ez Hashem. First, Chol Hamoed is unique schar and unique halachos, and it's Taka if you have a chance to learn Hilchos Chol Hamoed. But basically, the basic klal is a ma'isa hedget l'tzorech Yom Tov is mutter. Writing a shopping list or anything of tzorech Yom Tov is mutter. Once it becomes a ma'isa uman, for example, there's a pipe broke, you need a plumber to fix it. That's a ma'isa uman. The only hat is davar ha'ovid. Typically, it is. If there's a leak, there's damage. So davar ha'ovid or tzorech ram is mutter of ma'isa uman. Tzorech Yom Tov is enough of a heta for ma'isa hedget. We gave an example of a davar avod is writing up a get, an example of a sefer Torah that the shul has no other sefer Torah, is a tzarech rabbim. Writing a shopping list, Ikradin is mutter to write it as it is. The minig is, some have a minig to make a slanty top line. That's enough. A shini isn't a heta. When it's asa, it's asa. But when there's a chumrah, we make a shinui. Children could be allowed to play with coloring books or Scrabble. Scribbling also grad is mutter, but Scrabble, these type of games that are einim iskayemis are mutter. To play the game, I forgot to mention, the kids like to, when there's a foggy window, they write in the foggy window, that's zicha mutter, that's zicha einim iskayemis. Anything that has a lettering, for example, on a cake, pashtis is a ksiva einim iskayemis, besides it's tzarech yomtiv and a ma'isa hedjit. An artist in the park should be considered a ma'isa uman, and a mir la'akam would apply. Putting up a sign that's necessary for Chol Hamoed, or second is yomtiv, at the change of the zmanim, a shiur, shalom zachar, shavas haveda is mutter. Registered mail, you could have the goy sign, or you could sign if you think it's a tzarech moyed. Writing a check or a receipt is okay. If the collector is coming around with a credit card machine on Chol Hamoed, you could give him tzedakah gesundheit, and you could ask for a receipt, but definitely it's mutter. The big question is, how do you touch up today's technology? Is it a ma'isa uman because of the toitzah is umandik, or is it a ma'isa uman when there's a pa'ula? And this is negayah to probably countless shilas, but we gave an example of a typewriter and or a Polaroid camera. They both have a simple pa'ula, a professional toitzah, and most posek mode, you look at the pa'ula. If the pa'ula was hedjidik, then even though there's a magnificent toitzah, it's considered a ma'isa hedjit. That's why you could have a receipt from the ATM machine, even though it's coming out professional writing, but it's a press of the button. Photostat, printing, all these things, if it's a press of the button, it's okay. Email, fax is mutter to send it. The receiver could interpret it, could print it if he needs it. X-rays or any type of medical appointment should be made after Yom Tiv, unless it's a davar avod. A phone, GPS, all these things on a screen, when it doesn't translate into writing, is never a shaila. That's why it's like a lighting of a sukkah's teishvu. Taking a picture without developing, even Shem Hashem, believe it or not, is mutter to erase. And recording a shiur is mutter because it's not a ksiv at all. Once again.